all the way from Australia and Japan to the U.S. and Canada, Europe, everywhere. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Again, my name is Elena Fraga, and actually before I start tonight, I have the privilege, the honor to host this call tonight for you, and I'm humbled by it, let me tell you. And the reason is because, the way I see things is very simplistic. People call me the queen of simplicity for a reason. The reason is because I tend to see things, too simple. I break them down. So tonight, hopefully, you will get a thing or two about being an entrepreneur, about being an online entrepreneur as well. And tonight, my intention is that really you turn your life around if that is what you want, the same way I have turned my life around working online. And if I can ask you a favor, I want you to open your mind and really not only be ready to listen, I also want you to accept myself, accept me the way I am, the same way that I'm going to accept the way you are, right? And this way we can all learn. And yes, you are listening to my voice only, right? But the reality is that in a way, you and I are having a heart-to-heart conversation. That's the way I feel it. And I want you to stay the entire call because sometimes when I speak at the beginning, sounds like I'm going to speak about the same thing. But then, surprise, surprise, I start telling you different stories, different teachings. And tonight, I'm actually going to acknowledge some people here on the call as well. And at the end, I am going to give you some tips for your business. And as you know, I am always wearing my marketing hat. So if I really want to know a thing or two about, the things that I'm doing to be there on the top 10, certainly I will share some of that too. So first things first, a disclaimer. If you just arrived to the call, this is Elena Fraga, the Spanglish speaking from Miami. And I actually learned English in Boston, Massachusetts, and in Vermont. But I live in Miami, so I speak a mix between Bostonian accent and Miamian accent, which is stronger. So forgive me for that. And the second disclaimer that I have for you is that sometimes in my calls and in people's calls here, right, we talk about money, and we love talking about money. And I have to give you a disclaimer. And probably you read it on the website or you listened at the beginning, but I still have to tell you. So I'm going to wear my attorney's hat here for a second, and I'm going to tell you that these incomes vary. All incomes are different. And if you want to see the income disclaimer, you can go to the Empower Network website and click where it says income disclaimer. And there you will see the average incomes in Empower Network. So far, my best week, my best Friday, and in the business has been $52,000, over $52,000 for the week. And that includes promotions and all kinds of things. And as I mentioned, incomes vary, and I want you to know that. Okay? Fair enough? All righty. So I'm going to share tonight a few things. Number one, today I had a conversation with one of our leaders here in the company. Her name is Dee Berenja. And Dee and her husband, Justin, are great leaders. And she actually interviewed me for a podcast that they are very successfully doing, right? They are on iTunes. And so in any case, she asked me how your journey as a weird entrepreneur started. And when she asked me the question, I thought, you know what? Yes, it is weird. And I think that for many, many people, maybe for you here on the line, the way you are going to start, or you already started, right, your entrepreneur career, maybe it was for necessity or because of necessity, and maybe it was in a strange, mysterious way. Well, that was the way for me. I actually became a traditional entrepreneur when I was about 22, 23 years old. I started very young, But at that time, I started in a traditional business. And the story, I didn't share it before. I'm going to share it today. The story is that I was studying in Boston. I had a student visa. And I was studying there, and I finished my school. My family wanted me to go back to Venezuela, where I was born and raised. And I didn't want to go back because of obvious reasons, right? Too much crime. And, I was living in a very, very small town. And, long story, which I will share in another conversation. The town was so small that we only had a traffic light. That's how small it was. And but the biggest thing for me is I wanted a better life for myself. And eventually, I was very young at the time, but I thought that if one day I was going to have a family, I wanted to have a family in a place where I could offer my kids, right, a good future. So that's where my entrepreneurial career started. So I didn't know where to start. Again, I was in Boston. I came to Miami. I actually got married here in Miami. And I opened a shop. It was at the perfect time, perfect place. So tip for you tonight, if you are going to start a business, start at a perfect time, in a perfect place, or in a good place, right? And which is what you are going to do here tonight if you haven't started yet. So at that time, I opened a small boutique in South Beach because at the time it was very hot and very, it was really great, a great location and all that good stuff that is good for traditional brick-and-mortar businesses. And but I didn't know, or I didn't realize at the time, that I was actually buying a full-time job. And the way I started is, like many entrepreneurs, I started with no money. I borrowed from my family, several families, and actually even credit cards and the bank. And my family told me I was crazy, which in a way I was, right? But we are all crazy. If we're not crazy, we never get to anywhere in life, I believe, at least now when I look back. And but I started my shop. And at the beginning it was really, really great. Why? Because I was very young, recently married. My ex-husband and I will travel all over the place, opening locations, because we opened at a good place at that time. It's different times than today, right? Because we opened at the right time, we grew, and we grew fast. We expanded very quickly. But as we expanded, because it was a traditional business, we were expanding our problems too. And many people don't realize that when you have a traditional brick-and-mortar business, like, a regular shop, right, a physical location, you have to pay rent, you need to have employees, right? And as good as you are, and you are a hard-working person, you need to pay so many other things. You need to be on top of inventory turnover and shipments and insurance and taxes and all of those licenses that you need to start a business. So not only is it very expensive to start, it is very expensive to maintain. And even if you are successful, the more success you have in traditional businesses, the least, generally speaking, the least time freedom you have. So I tell you what happened for me. What happened for me was that when my son Michael was born, my son is like the eyes in my face, okay? If you are a dad or a mom, I am sure the most important thing for you in life is your kids, right? So when my son was born, I was really, really in a tough place because I used to work like many moms, like many dads, right? Like many parents. I used to work 70, 80, 90 hours a week or 60 hours a week, like a lot, right? I used to wake up early in the morning, all, like sleepy, and, bring my son to school and go to work and come back at night when he was already going to sleep. And you know what? A day passed by, a second day, a third day, and a week and another week, and a month and another month, and a year and another year. And I realized I was wasting my life. I was miserable. And I don't know if you relate to this, and maybe some people here are not parents. One day you will be. Or maybe you don't want to be a parent, but maybe you don't have that time freedom. You feel like a slave. That's the way I felt. I felt like a slave. I felt like my life was going fast. And yes, on the outside, it looked so good that I was having my shops, etc., right? But in the inside, I was dying. I remember one time I went to Las Vegas. Everybody wants to go to Las Vegas. But I went to Las Vegas to see one of my shops. And I remember going all day to work, right? Because I wanted to go back the same day to Miami. So 5 hours there, work all day, and then I will come back in the red eye, which is the latest flight at night, to be home the following morning. And I did that so many times. And I remember one time in Las Vegas, and I will never forget. I got to the hotel, closed the door, and just, alone, right? Went to bed and start crying. Start crying and start praying, please, God. And if you don't believe in God, please forgive me, right? I do. And you know what? I used to pray, please, God, I beg you, let me find a way so that I could replace my income working from home. You know what? I don't care what I have to go through. I will go through whatever you want.